Thank you very much, Cami, for joining me. Really lovely to see you. I just wanted to
Amazing.
have a chat really to find out a little bit more about
Mhm.
you and La Maison and everything that's brought you to where you are, because you're doing fantastically well at the moment. So yeah, start where you feel comfortable. What was your journey and relationship like with alcohol to begin with before you started the brand and the business?
Oh, I feel like this is a long story that needs to go way, way, way back.
Okay.
I have spent my entire career in the drink industry, always worked in hospitality industry, and even when I was at university, to be fair, even when I was in high school, I was already working in hospitality.
Okay.
I actually I grew up in a very artistic family. I'm originally from the south of France, but my family is a bit of a mix and a melting pot. My dad is from North Africa, and I grew up in the south of France before going to travel with my mother. But my dad was an artist, and my parents used to have a theater, and there was a bar in the theater. And from my young age, I was already, staring glasses of wine and opening bottles of wine before I was even drinking any of it. So hospitality and like and not especially alcohol, but like hospitality has been a big part of my upbringing, of my culture. There was always people around in my house. There was always, adding a plate. There was always actors and comedians and all of that, and it became something that like made me feel very connected to people, and I just love how food and drinks bring people together. And then when I went to university and I actually studied art and marketing and communication after that. And I always worked in restaurant, in bars, and I just like had that on the side. And it was always something that will really light me up to create an experience where I could bring people together for a moment of joy, a moment of celebration, a moment where they will feel like they belong and feel like they can connect. And then I finished university, decided that I wanted to go and travel, landed in Australia, in Melbourne, and didn't speak a word of English at the time. That was 15 years ago.
Really? Wow.
um, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be just backpacking around Australia. I want to live in Australia. I want to feel like I'm just living in the city. And I was in Melbourne, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go and work in a bar or cafe or restaurant. And I ended up working in a cocktail bar and discovering the beautiful, beautiful world of cocktails. And as someone who was, coming from an artistic background and very much grew up a family of artists, I was always on that search for a way of expressing my creativity. It was like I did so many different things from dance to painting to all of that. And I
Yeah.
loved it all, but there was never that moment when it felt really right. And as soon as I put one foot behind the bar and start creating cocktail, it was this epiphany moment when I was like,
Wow.
wow, this is my way of being creative. And I think that's one thing that I really, really love in the industry, and still to these days, very admire in our industry is the passion and the creativity. And it was kind of combining all of that. It was the creative side of it. It was the working with flavor, making something that looks beautiful, that tastes amazing. But it was also all the hospitality side of it, creating something for people to have an amazing experience, and to bring people together. So I did that. I became a bartender. I was like, I'm gonna go to Australia for 6 months, and then never came back. I stayed
That
there
was
for
it.
a couple of years, and then I ended up moving to London, and I was here for a few years, like I think almost 5, and then I went to New York, and then I came back here. And so I went on that journey of very much being part of the drink industry. I became a global ambassador for a beautiful French elderflower liqueur, which was family owned, but then was acquired by Bacardi. So I worked for Bacardi for many, many years. I worked for almost a decade for that brand in total. And it was incredible. I had the experience of traveling around the world and going from one cocktail bar to another to talk about the art of the aperitif and how to celebrate. And even though there was already very much of like that angle of being mindful, and it was all like low ABV or light alcohol, as I like to call it. And there was already that approach to it. I was working like in nightclub, pouring like laybacks of spirits. There was definitely this angle of like lighter cocktail, aperitif, slowing down, I guess a bit more of like that Southern Europe culture of like celebrating and drinking. But there was a moment where, for me on my journey, more than like my job, but like the intensity of the job, because every time I talk about like that role that I had, everyone is like, oh my God, that's like the dream,
So
that's
exciting.
so
Yeah.
glamorous. And it was, in some extent, I got to like launched the brand in China and Japan, and like do so much. I lived in the US and traveled around the world. My role was global. I launched in South America. Like, it was very incredible, and an amazing experience, and be part of this beautiful industry. But after a while, it really started to take a big toll on my physical, mental, emotional health. And I went on that search for finding balance for myself. And at first, I was fortunate to, at the time, still have my mother, and she kept on saying to me, "You should practice yoga." And I was like, "No, mom, that's your thing." When you're like young and don't listen to your parents when
Yeah.
they already have so many good advice. Now, being a parent myself, I'm like, God, I wish, like, I hope they're gonna listen to me.
They
So I
won't,
can.
because you
They
didn't.
probably won't.
Oh, no.
Exactly. Exactly.
I feel the
And so.
same.
Exactly, it would be the same, right? And so she was like giving me a little bit of like advice, and I found myself in the yoga class, and I was like, I'm not even sure about this. But yoga became sort of like a thing that I could do on the road. I could pack a yoga mat in my suitcase, and I could do it in my hotel room, or I could land somewhere and like find a yoga studio. Because obviously, traveling so much, like I could have gone to the gym, to be honest, in the hotel where I was staying. But I
Yeah.
guess like I find my way through yoga at first, and I find more balance in my physical well-being. Then I guess I become more aware, more mindful of kind of like that ripple effect of like of like information trickling from, I guess, a lot of people at first get to yoga for the physical aspect of it, and then kind of like become more aware as a 360 practice. And so that was like kind of like the beginning. And then I became a yoga teacher myself, and I became a meditation teacher, and I became a holistic health coach on the side of what I was doing. And at first, I also was still a global ambassador. I got to build a team of ambassador of 40 people around the world. And I really wanted to avoid them feeling as burnout as I felt myself. And so
Yeah.
we started talking a lot about like things that they could do, and I was really protective of their time. And then from them, it started being more of like hospitality industry, and I really wanted to like help the industry to make it more sustainable, because again, I was like, there's so many amazing, talented people, and so many that we've lost also in our industry because of like, alcohol consumption and drug consumption and all of that. And so I started to really focus on like partners in the industry, and I actually launched Healthy Hospo with a friend of mine, and help him to launch that platform that he's still running and is amazing in helping partners to find
Yeah.
more balance in their well-being. And then at some point I stopped, and I was like, I love what I do, and I've always been very, very passionate about everything that I've done in my life. But I was like, there is such a gap between how the world is becoming more conscious and more mindful, and this desire to look after our well-being, and either it's going to the gym or going to a yoga class or going for a run or whatever it is that you practice as movement. And even meditation, was becoming more like at the front of the conversation. And what we were eating, people were
Yeah.
understanding that if you eat crap, you're just going to feel terrible, and
Yeah.
it will have a negative impact on your well-being as a whole. But then when it was coming to drinking, it was like Friday night, everyone goes to the pub, and like there was just no understanding or realization that that has a huge impact on yourself. I kept on saying to people, you can go to the gym every day, meditate every morning, like if you drink too much alcohol, you're just not going to feel great. And so I really started to realize that there was a gap, there was a disconnect. And so I left my job and went on, like, launched my business and went on that journey of decided to inspire the world to drink more mindfully. I was like, I want to show people how to bring that mindfulness that they practice in their life
Yeah.
into the glass. You know, how can we bring mindfulness into the glass? That was very much of like my goal. And on that journey, like, I guess even when I launched up, I wanted to be a platform that would be inclusive for everyone. And so I wanted to show that for people that weren't drinking alcohol at all, that you could have amazing cocktails, because everyone were like, I mean, I launched officially in 2018, but I started in like 2016, 2017. And
Sure.
so like at that time, Sidlip was around, just launching, but that was it. There was no other brands. There was nothing else was
Yeah.
around. It was Ben from Sidlip, then it was Claire Warner, who was from Acorn and the sister product of Sidlip, who was very much also in that category, and it was myself, and that was it pretty much. And so I really wanted to become an advocate for this category and to push the agenda of mindful drinking for the trade, and then to help consumers to understand what to drink if they didn't want to drink alcohol. And most importantly, I wanted to show that, like, it was fun and it was delicious and it was a lifestyle. And then for me, like, so my drinks were alcohol free, but then I also wanted to show people that wanted to moderate how to imbibe alcohol in a more conscious way, with one unit in cocktails, so reducing the alcohol content drastically. And if we follow the guideline here in the UK with the NHS, is 14 units a week max. So I wanted to like show them like some very way lighter recipes on how to do it, and like better ingredients, less sugar, less crap in the glass,
Yeah.
to be honest. And so I did that. So that's how I launched La Maison Wellness. And on my journey of doing this, I was already, going through a very big like shift and changes in my life, in my personal life, in my career, because I was, leaving a big job and a big company, and taking a massive leap of faith and be like, this is what I believe, so I'm gonna go this way, even though everyone thinks this shouldn't be the direction. I'm gonna go that way. And so I was just like, I don't have the time, the space, the capacity in my brain to have a hangover. Like, no, thank you, can't deal with that. And so I was like, I have big dreams, big goals. And I was already like, I became a mindful drinker before that, few years before that, as I became a yoga teacher. Like, I was moderating and drinking more mindfully. And then when I launched my business, I was just so focused on that. And the more I was finding amazing alternative and creating delicious recipe, the less I was drinking alcohol. And now we're like, 6 years later, and I call myself 99% sober, just because I will taste, if I was judging the international wine and spirit competition, and I will taste if we need to taste. I was also judging last week or the week before the Hakkasan, the Taos Group
Wow.
global competition. And so the cocktails were alcoholic and non-alcoholic. So I was like tasting, and I'm fine with that. I don't drink, I wouldn't order something that is alcoholic for myself, just
Sure.
because I just know that like there's so many options that I truly enjoy. So that's kind of my journey of how, like, I feel like that
Oh.
very often I get that question, oh, was there like a big thing that happened that, you woke up one day from the worst
What was
hangover
that
ever
for
and you're
you?
like,
Yeah.
never again, I'm never drinking again. And it wasn't for me. It was very much of an organic evolution. And even though, if I look back at like my years at university or my early years and like working in the drink industry, I mean, my nickname at university was thirsty. That's how much I used to love, drinking and going out.
Wow.
And I was always up until 8 in the morning,
Yeah.
always the one making cocktails for everyone, always the one like ending up, dancing on the table and pouring like
Yeah.
delicious glasses of cocktails. So I definitely had like big years of like having fun and partying and all of that, but it didn't feel like that I hit rock bottom or I had a massive wake up call that I was like, things needs to change. Like, it was an organic evolution. And that's why I always say to people, like, you don't need to hit rock bottom to change your drinking habits. Like, you don't need to wait until you feel like you're at the end of it to change that. Like, it can be a positive change in your life that you do gradually, or I think we all different on our journey through mindful drinking. We all moderate or, not drink alcohol for different reason. And there's no one solution.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. Similarly to myself, I come from a hospitality background, 24 years working in bars and restaurants. So I was right there with you, dancing on the tables at 8 in the morning.
We probably did it together, we just don't
Probably.
remember.
I wouldn't remember at all. But and I had a great time in my youth. And I'm not one of those for sort of saying, oh no, it was all terrible. And I had loads of fun. I had good times and bad times, just like with everything. And like you, I never had a sudden realization. I mean, I've had many awful, awful hangovers and said, I'm never drinking again many times, but never really meant it. And it was more when I started looking after myself and my physical fitness and exercising more, then became more interested in what I was eating. And then that led to being more interested in what I was drinking. And then slowly realizing that the days when I drank, even when I didn't get drunk, I just felt like crap for a really long time. And it affected my mood so much and my motivation. Like 3 days later,
Absolutely.
4 days later. And
Just a cloudy mind,
terrible. So it's really interesting that you say that, and people, I think it's good for people to realize that you don't have to wait until everything is awful. If you just feel like it's time for a change, then you can make that change slowly, right?
Absolutely. And I also think that there's generally I mean, everyone knows that drinking too much alcohol is not good for you. Like when I was at the peak of traveling all the time, working for a spirit company, I used to go and see, get a check at the doctor once a year, whatever. And the doctor will always ask me, so how many unit of alcohol do you drink a week? And I would be like, I think I should lie, so we know it, we're aware of that. But I generally think that we sort of caught up in this idea that that is, that's I was talking with a friend of mine recently, and we were talking about alcohol, and he said, yeah, but we don't take in consideration that alcohol brings people together and the positive impact of that. And I said to him, I was like, socializing has an amazing positive impact, gathering with your friend, great. You don't need alcohol for that though. But there's this story that we told by the media, the movie, that drinking culture, that to socialize we have to imbibe alcohol, to get together, to have fun. And I think it's really time we question that, because that's just not the reality. I think all of us maybe at some point wanted to change their drinking habit years ago, and we're like, oh, but I'm going to miss out. Oh, but I'm not going to be able to have delicious drink. Oh, but I will just feel left out when we go to cocktail bars. But that's not the
My
case anymore.
friends say, will they still hang out with me? Will I still be cool? Or
And it's just not the case anymore. You can go out and have fun. When I launched Maison Wellness, one of the, my motto and one of the quote of it was epic nights and early mornings, and I was like, I want to have an epic night. I'm not giving up on my epic nights. I love going out. I love having delicious cocktails. I love having fun. I still love dancing on table and on bars. I still do it. It's just that I remember it the day after, and I remember all the fun that I've had, which is great. So I think it's about changing the conversation and just questioning what we feel like is the default and the how it's done. And one thing that I love with what I do is actually usually when I have this conversation with people, when I go into companies and do my corporate talk, or when I do events like the one that you came at the Well at Balance Festival, or whatever it is that I get to talk to people and make drinks and have this conversation, there's almost this light bulb moment when they're like, huh, I never thought about it this way, or wow, and they have a taste of the cocktail and they're like, this is delicious. I would never have thought that this is non-alcoholic or low alcohol. And there's this conversation, and then all of a sudden you kind of seeded this new way, this new perspective. And then people just go into this amazing journey of becoming a mindful drinker. And I think that there is a shift. We see that more and more people want to moderate. I think that like the drinking culture is changing, and hopefully it will keep changing for the better. I always say mindful drinking isn't about drinking alcohol or abstaining. It's about becoming aware of our drinking habits so we can change it for the better and find the balance that works for ourselves, because we're all unique individual, and you have to find what works for yourself right now. I think that it's important to have this awareness, and when you have this self-awareness, then that's your superpower tool. So then you can adjust, you can listen to yourself, you can be like, okay, well, I think at the moment I just don't want to drink alcohol at all. That's just like, I'm going through this and this, and this is a phase in my life where I don't want it. Or there, I feel like that moderation is what works for me. Or I know that like finding your balance, that's amazing. That's the superpower of being a mindful drinker.
I love that superpower. That's the way to think of it. People don't think of it like that. It's always framed as missing out, or not being part of it, or having the FOMO. But framing it like it's your superpower to choose, not to abstain necessarily, but just maybe not to drink tonight, or maybe not have that many, or whatever works for you, and finding what's going to be best for your life and for the goals that you want. I absolutely love that.
It's quite interesting also because I feel like that when I started, Ruby went down, had like wrote Sober Curious, and there was
Yes.
like a few people that were, becoming more and more open and more vocal about like their journey. And I think I always say to people, stop focusing on reducing your alcohol intake. Focus on like discovering alternative and product that you love. I mean, last week I had the opportunity to test over almost like 100 products. And
Wow.
there was like when we were blind testing for the competition, and there was so many that were absolutely delicious. Like regardless if you drink alcohol or not, you should try those products because they are delicious and amazing. And so I always say to people, focus on like finding that amazing sparkling wine that you enjoy, or that beautiful kombucha that you can serve in a glass of wine, that delicious alcohol-free beer that you can stock in your fridge, that cocktail that you can make at home, and just focus on that, because then at the end of the day, you will realize that at the end of the weekend, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, that you are drinking less alcohol because you're replacing it with amazing alternative. And I think a lot of people, they have the willingness to change their drinking habits, but they just focus on changing the habits instead of finding other things. And I think that a part of a great way to do it is by finding this alternative, is by making this delicious cocktail, because then you don't feel left out, then you don't feel like you're missing out. And for me, that was one of the missing pieces, and why I launched La Maison Wellness, why I created mindful cocktails, and now I do all the drinks, as mindfully Cami. It's like, I wanted to bring options to set them for success. Otherwise, it's Friday, you end up at the bar, you don't know what you order, and you're like, go on, I'll have a gin and tonic. Go on, I would have whatever they're
Yeah.
having.
You mentioned judging. I know you've done a load of judging for a load of competitions now. And you mentioned earlier on that, you launched La Maison back in 2018 when Seedlip were just coming out into the marketplace. Talk to me a little bit about the changes that you've seen in the industry specifically, because the amount and sheer volume of alcohol-free drinks that are out there now, and things like the World Alcohol Free Awards that just did their first one, which I believe you were a big part of. And having been around the world, what changes have you seen in the low and no drinks industry over the last few years?
I mean, this has been such an exciting category to be part of, because as I was saying, I think we did the first judging, or like blind testing of product in 2019 or in 2020, one or the other. And it was a handful, it was four of us. It was Christine who started the alcohol free hours. It was Laura from Club Soda, and it was someone else who used to work, who at the time was like working for Distill Venture at the time. And it was just us, and we were like trying to figure out how to organize like the products that were like the alternative, like an alcohol-free gin, alcohol-free whiskey, or like those things, or the products that were completely different. Like we had like 3 spirits that were just launched and things like that. And it was so interesting to see. I mean, Seedlip was officially, like, I think he created it in like 2015 in his kitchen, made it in his garage for a while before it made his way to Selfridges and then to Diageo. It was just like a handful of products, and it's been so amazing to see how much it has grown, but also as I get to do all this like different awards every year, and we blind test everything, so you don't know, you can't be influenced by the brand, the bottle, and all of that. And even categories like the wine, I remember in 2020, like the tray of alcohol-free wine were just, I mean, by the end of it, you felt a bit sick. I'm not gonna lie, you were like, I need a break. I need a break now. Like, and now, like this year, we tasted so many different ones, and some of them were just like incredible, So it's been amazing to see the creativity. It's been amazing to see the technique really improving
Yeah.
in the liquid development. It's been amazing to see people taking different routes, from I'm going to create a range that is really an alternative to the spirits that already exist, or some people being, super creative and going into different direction and creating something that is completely unique. And I think every option has a place and is so important for the category. I mean, the category has grown and it keeps on growing. And as someone who does a lot of consultancy on the liquid development side, so I work with different companies on helping and tasting and developing that. It's just so exciting. Like, I get so excited to try all of this and to see. And there's so much. I know that like everyone is like, there's so many alcohol-free options now, but there's actually so much more room for incredible product. And I also think that there's room for creating a more premium side of the alcohol-free spirits. Like the same way that if you look at the spirits industry, there's layers, there's so much layers of the alcohol industry, and I think that there's a lot that can be brought to the know and low category, and we've come so far already, but I'm excited to see what we will bring the next few years for sure.
I think that you're right. It's so exciting. I mean, I've been doing the magazine just for a couple of months now, and it's opened my eyes to even more than I knew was out there. As you're looking in the supermarkets and on the shelves, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all those sort of like big brands who get most of the space, but then the smaller guys are like, "Hey, I'm here too, and try this and
Yeah.
try some of these things." You're like, "This is amazing," and
Mm-hmm.
you don't even think of it as not having alcohol or having low alcohol. You're just like, this is just a flavor that's
Yeah.
really special. And like you say, some of it's not great, but that's the same with anything, right?
I actually think that like some product that we tasted when we started weren't great and they're not around anymore. I think that quality is what is going to allow brand to stay and to become this big classic non-alcoholic spirits that
Yeah,
will remain, over time. And I feel like that at the moment, they still, the mindful drinking movement and the no and low category, there's still so much that needs to happen. And, for so many reasons, it's very much driven and pushed by the consumer, but there's so much education, inspiration, and guidance that can that we can share with the consumer to help the consumer to really understand the category, what to drink, how to make cocktails. Like there's so much that can be done. And then the trade is just started in the past, couple of years to really, really get on board with the no and low category. And that is so exciting because I think that like as the industry professional, like getting behind it and really understanding the importance of having a no and low offer, the inclusivity of it, the necessity, the fact that that's what people want to drink, that's going to also help the category to really keep growing and growing in the right direction. And as we see more like amazing drink expert joining this like category again, it's like we're helping this industry, this category to grow in the right direction. And I actually think that over the next few years it's just going to get better and better and better and better. And yes, of course, there's people that will jump on the wagon and want a slice of the cake, but I really think that those brands might not last very long. And I think that there's it's a very exciting time for the no and low category and the mindful drinking movement.
I agree, and I think it's interesting what you say about the possibility of a premium sort of range, because a couple of people
Mm,
I've spoken to lately have all said that as well. So a couple of brands out there who said, you know, we want to create this category that is the premium version, just like as you said, you get the premium alcohol spirits, the premium non-alcohol, low alc spirits, because it's down to the people, right? So the category is growing, but it's not growing just because brands are making drinks. It's growing because discerning
mm,
consumers out there want something good and they want quality. And as long as
mm-hmm.
you're demanding that, then you know there will be people to answer that demand. So I think that's the way
Absolutely.
going forward.
And
And
I think that it's, and that's what I mean. Like, I feel like the it's a bit of a Rubik's cube at the moment, and we haven't find like it's not done. Let's say it. And I think there's a few, or like, this like puzzle when you need to like move one piece to move
yeah,
another to
yeah,
move
yeah,
thing. This is a bit where we are with the category, because there's a few things that needs to be moved forward, and that is consumer understanding the category, consumer being, understanding why they should pay the same price, to be honest, of like an alcoholic cocktail and a non-alcoholic cocktail. Because as soon as you put it cheaper, you're saying that the value is the alcohol, when as someone who does a lot of work on, development of liquid, it's expensive to make non-alcoholic spirit. And so there's some pre-consume ideas that we need to break. There's some
yeah,
things that need to be shifted in the drinking culture, in the understanding of the category by the consumer, understanding of the category by the trade, the venues to get on board. Like, there's a few things that needs to really move forward in order for the category to really, really thrive, which is again excited. We have definitely room for growth, and I think that the future is really exciting for the movement and the category. And I also think that at some point, like at the moment, we put every single mindful drinker in the same basket. We're all the same. It's like mindful drinking, it's small, it's niche, it's like everything in. But there's so many different reasons, for why people will moderate. And I think that if you moderate from I don't know, like a religious belief, or if you a non-drinker for health
yeah.
reason, or if it's a lifestyle decision, or if it's like all of this, you would have different motivation, but also different expectation. And I think that, like, as we grow that movement, then we're going to be able to bring more nuances. And I think that, like, we should have a whole category that is suited for people that are Muslim, or like whatever religion that they're not drinking alcohol for, or people that actually have an allergy to alcohol and have like, or are like, if you, I mean, I was pregnant what feels like not that long ago, but apparently over a year ago now. Like, when you're pregnant, like there's a whole lot of things that like you don't really want to imbibe, and then includes like fermented products and all of that. So like, I think when we grow this category, we will be able to like sort of start really adding some nuances. And maybe the people that are like like not drinking alcohol because they're very conscious of their health and their well-being, and they're very much on that physical of like exercising and all of that, there's other things that like you could add in those products that will be appealing to them, and that can be some adaptogens, some botanicals, some vitamins, some all of that, some more of like the functional side of it. And so that's also where I'm excited to see the category going, is when we stop just generalizing everything and putting everything in the same basket, but we can really talk to specific audience and specific guest and consumer, and then we can really add some like layers, and we can really tailor things for people,
It's amazing.
if
And
that makes sense.
that's really, I like that. I really like that. Cami, before I let you go, tell me a bit more about La Maison Wellness and The Well. Where can we find you guys? What do you do? What's so fabulous about it? I already know, but for those people watching, what's so
Thank you.
amazing
Amazing. Well, so La Maison Wellness was um, the company that I launched in 2018. It's a platform dedicated to expand the conversation around mindful drinking, about no and low cocktails. I create mindful cocktails, and I share recipes weekly on La Maison Wellness, and also on social media, on Mindfully Cami, on Instagram, on TikTok. I'm all about opening the conversation, showing that tasty doesn't have to be boozy. So I create a lot of non-alcoholic cocktail, but also some low alcohol, some 1 unit cocktail for people that want to still imbibe, but be more mindful in the way that they do it, even though what I do these days is 99% non-alc, but there is still, and like definitely on the website, there's loads of recipes for people. And you can find me like exactly on social, you can find me on the website, you can find me at loads of different events, the festival throughout the summer. I'll be at Tales of the Cocktail for more industry things and London Cocktail Week, and then loads of more consumer events. And then always reach out. I'm so happy to talk about the movement, talk about the category, share all my recipes. All my recipes are free on my website and are there for you to make. So please do it.
Also, tell me, you do some corporate training as well, is that right?
I do a lot of like corporate training when I go into companies and talk about, mindful drinking, what's the mindful drinking movement, how to become a mindful drinker, introduce them to the category, show them how to make drinks. It's usually so much fun because people love making cocktails together. And again, it's always an eye opener, and I always get amazing feedback when people are like, wow, that was really life
Hands-on.
changing.
You
So
go into the companies and people can actually play with the ingredients to get to make.
exactly. I do a version which is online, and I do it in person as well. Yeah, absolutely.
That's brilliant, that's brilliant. And what's the web address for La Maison?
LaMaisonWellness.com, and then La Maison Wellness for Instagram, and Mindfully Cami for Instagram and TikTok.
Excellent. That is amazing. Camille, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. The way that you approach this is just so open and so welcoming. And it just goes to show people that it's not about telling everyone you mustn't drink and it's bad for you. I love the way you just welcome everybody in to just give it a try and see what works for them and makes them happy. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for having me. And I love that, like, this is the, your takeaway. I think for me, it's about bringing everyone to the same table. And I think we should be able to be more inclusive and to celebrate together, and for everyone to feel they are welcome and they belong. So we should have option for everyone, for sure.
Lovely. Excellent. Camille, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.